Hello, Body of Messiah. Today we're going to cover part 4 of lesson 2 of TBON, Take Back Our Narrative. Today we're going to cover more of Africa throughout the Bible, and I'm going to focus on areas that have been specified and some comments that were made by a Mr. Tangwa. I really appreciate the comments and the insight about these areas. So we're going to cover it today. And I'm also going to revisit the name Zerah, more details to uncover about it. I really appreciate when people who are indigenous or more familiar with certain areas in Africa share information with me so I can go back and research them and correlate them with biblical scriptures based on the Bible and history. So it continues to reinforce the fact that Africa is found throughout the Bible, and the people who are scattered thereof are descendants, Hebrew descendants of Patriarch Abraham, and are descendants of Israel. So let's begin. We're going to start by covering South Africa, 3 areas in South Africa. And the first town that we're going to cover is called Mamre, M-A-M-R-E. This town is mentioned in Genesis chapter 13, verse 18. And this is the place where it says Abram, not Abraham. He wasn't named Abraham yet. But Abram moved his tent from place to place and came and dwelt by Mamre's large trees, which are in Hebron. And there he built an altar to Adonai. It also says in Genesis chapter 23, verse 17, is where Abraham, he's now named Abraham, purchased land that was like a burial plot for the family. So he purchased land, and he's getting ready to bury Sarah. But he purchased this land from a man named Ephron, the Hittite. Ephron's field is in Machpelah, next to Mamre. You see, there's the name again. Now you see that Mamre is also mentioned in Genesis chapter 23, verse 19. And it says, Abraham buried Sarah in the cave of the field of Machpelah, next to Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So you'll see that a lot, that Mamre is mentioned. It'll say like these trees, which are in Hebron, Mamre's large trees. It says, he buried her in the field or cave of Machpelah next to Mamre, is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And one thing you'll find that in South Africa, there are series of caves that are found along that region. And so I think it's pretty amazing that Patriarch Abraham buried Sarah in the caves of the fields of Machpelah next to this region, Mamre, that is Hebron. Now the next one that we're going to cover is Zoar. Zoar, when we read in Genesis chapter 19, verse 20 through 23, is a city that's close to one of the towns near Sodom and Gomorrah. And this particular city is a city where Lot begged that the Most High would not destroy it. And so the angels of God, when they were carrying Lot out of Sodom and Gomorrah, all of the hail and the brimstone and all that fell, destroying the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he begged that they not destroy this city, Zoar, because it was the closest one to him. And he wouldn't have to travel so hard and far over mountainous regions. So God heard his cry and did not destroy Zoar. So the next town we're going to cover is Bela. Bela is mentioned in Genesis chapter 14, verse 2. Genesis chapter 14, verse 2. And once again, this is another town that's mentioned to be near Sodom and Gomorrah. And the reasons why is when you look in Genesis 14, it mentions how Patriarch Abraham is going basically to war to defeat these five kings that are associated with Sodom and Gomorrah. And one of the kings is called the King of Bela. This is Zoar. So it's saying this is Zoar, the King of Bela. So once again, Bela is a city or town that's associated being near Sodom. And also we'll see the name Bela. Bela is mentioned as a son of Benjamin in Genesis chapter 46, verse 21. So we have that Bela is a town in the city, and all of these are in familiar regions. Next, we're going to go over and we're going to cover cities in Namibia. The first one we're going to cover is called Bethany. Bethany is spelled with an I-E here, but we know that the city of Bethany is mentioned and it's spelled with a Y. When we look at the New Testament scriptures, the Brit Hadashah, and you'll see in the New Testament scriptures that this is a region or area that our Messiah roamed across, him and the disciples. You can find this in Mark chapter 11, verse 1, Mark chapter 14, verse 3, Luke chapter 19, verse 29, John chapter 12, verse 1, and Matthew chapter 26 and verse 6. So this region in Namibia, in Bethany, is associated with New Testament scripture. This next city, which we also know is associated with our Messiah, Yeshua, also Bethlehem. Bethlehem is mentioned also in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament scripture, and you'll find it mentioned specifically in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Now, it's mentioned in multiple books of the Bible, but I'm just only sharing a few. And it says, now after Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea. It's talking about this is the place where Yeshua was born. And then you can look and see. Now, mind you, keep in mind that Yeshua, when the Messiah was to be born, they had to flee away from King Herod because he was looking to hurt or harm the Messiah. So we have where they fled away from Jerusalem, away from the land space that's over in the Middle East. But isn't it amazing that Bethlehem is mentioned here? And this scripture that I love is Matthew chapter 2, verse 6, where our Adonai Elohim says, and you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. I think that is so beautiful. It's beautiful because the Most High God is telling Bethlehem that you will not be considered least. It's saying Bethlehem, land of Judah. So Bethlehem in the land of Judah here in this area will not be considered least among the rulers of Judah. And he says, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So know and believe and understand, with the nation of the country of Africa being affiliated with Judah, the southern kingdom, that it's not and never will be forgotten because our Messiah came from amongst them. Now, if you go back and you look at part 1 of lesson 2 of TBON, you'll notice where I go into detail describing Nazareth, also known as Nazareth in Ethiopia. Today they call it Adamah, but this is the area where our Messiah as a toddler had to flee to because Herod was trying to kill all the children that were, I think, 2 and younger. And I've proven with scripture that the Most High God says out of Egypt. Basically, Africa was known as the land of Cush, Egypt or Ethiopia. But the scripture says, out of Egypt I call my son. And so you have Bethlehem that's associated with a city in Africa. And you also have Nazareth, which is associated with a city in Africa once again. The next city we'll cover is Hebron. Hebron is mentioned in Genesis chapter 13, verse 18, and also Genesis chapter 23, verse 2. It says, "And Sarah died in Kirjath Rabbah. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan." So once again, you see Hebron. Hebron is closely associated with this Mamre, and you'll notice that South Africa and Namibia, they border one another. So here you see a city called Hebron that's in Namibia. It says in Genesis chapter 35, verse 27, "And Jacob came unto Isaac his father, unto Mamre," once again, "the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned." So like I've said before, that Africa is also the origins of man. You see here where our patriarch Abraham, it says Abraham and Isaac sojourned. They traveled amongst this region. They traveled amongst Hebron and Mamre. And I do believe, because of this being the forefront of our patriarchs, this land that they traveled through and amongst is the region that's in Africa. Now, you may say, but there's a Hebron and Mamre somewhere up in the Middle East, in that land space that the United Nations define as Israel today. Okay, fine. All I have to say is that Africa is the origin, even of the names of those cities, came from Africa because they were the first. Now we're going to go over, and I'm going to reinforce this fact when we cover this city, Nema or Naama is called in Namibia. You'll see that this city is somewhat mentioned when you look in Job chapter 2, verse 1. One of Job's friends is named Zophar, the Naamathite. So if he's a Naamathite, there's a region, Naama. Okay? Now, to even further more about the origins of man, look in the book of Jasher, chapter 5, verse 15. It says, "And Noah, at the time he was 498 years old," right? When he began to look for a wife. He was 498 years old. "Went and took a wife. He chose Naamah," right here, "the daughter of Enoch. She was 580 years old." Isn't that amazing? So you have this region that's named after the wife of Noah. And this is once again at the origins, the beginning of mankind. This is, he took this wife, and this is the wife that went into the ship with him that was built before the great flood. The origins of man. So by the Messiah, this reinforces once again Africa throughout the Bible, that Africa is the origins of man. Africa is a big part of Israel, based on the Bible, the boundaries that Adonai promised patriarch Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, and also many of the descendants, Hebrew descendants of patriarch Abraham and Israel, roam and dwell throughout Africa. They're descendants of Africans and African slaves. Well, by the Messiah, this is the end of lesson 2, part 4. I'm going to cover a shorter lesson that I revealed, and I'm going to return back to Zerah, the namesake of Zerah, and some more information that I found there. And I just hope you're able to join me. After I cover part 5, this next lesson that's coming, I'm going to return back to the COOH, come out of her lesson series. And if anyone has any additional information regarding Africa and those land spaces and regions throughout that are associated with the Bible, please feel free to let me know. I'm not the best at checking the messages that I see out there in comments, but once I do run across them, I do make my best effort to research and continue to reinforce the fact that Africa is throughout the Bible. Well, until next time, Body of Messiah, may Adonai Elohim cover you and your family, shield and protect you, and shower you with his shalom peace. Goodbye, Body of Messiah.